They say the most guarded hearts love the deepest, not in words, but in the silence between breaths, in the trembling touch that speaks louder than promises. For the avoidant, love is not an easy surrender. It's a slow unraveling of fear, a quiet revolution that happens behind closed eyes and trembling hands. For the avoidant, emotional vulnerability is not something that comes easily. It's often the most guarded part of their being, the hidden chamber where all their fears, unspoken needs, and long-suppressed emotions are buried. When love enters their life, it doesn't immediately break those walls. Instead, it quietly lingers at the edges, waiting for a moment when their heart finally dares to open. During lovemaking, when their connection to another person reaches its most intimate point, something rare begins to happen. The same person who has spent years mastering emotional control finds themselves trembling, not from desire alone, but from the quiet terror of being seen. Vulnerability, for them, isn't just about physical exposure. It's the emotional nakedness that comes when they can no longer hide behind detachment. An avoidant in genuine love doesn't just make love with their body. They begin to let their emotions bleed through the cracks they've tried so hard to seal. You can see it in their eyes when they hold your gaze longer than usual, in the way they hesitate before touching you, as if trying to memorize the reality of closeness they once believed was unsafe. Eye contact becomes something sacred, a silent confession that says, "I feel this, even if I can't say it." For someone who usually averts their eyes to protect their inner world, maintaining that gaze is an act of bravery. It's their way of letting you in, piece by piece, without words, without control, without pretending to be unaffected. In those moments, their defenses waver, and what you see isn't the emotionally distant version they show to the world. It's the childlike tenderness they've buried beneath years of fear. When love is genuine, their usual emotional restraint dissolves into small, almost imperceptible gestures that reveal their heart. They may trace your skin softly, not out of lust, but out of wonder, as if trying to convince themselves that this closeness is real, that this person won't vanish once they let go of their fear. The way they breathe changes too. There's a certain stillness, a presence that wasn't there before. They stop overthinking and start feeling. For the first time in a long time, they are not escaping intimacy. They are surrendering to it. This surrender doesn't come easily. For avoidants, closeness often feels like danger because it threatens their illusion of self-sufficiency. They were conditioned to equate emotional dependence with weakness, to associate love with loss and affection with eventual abandonment. So when they find themselves opening up during lovemaking, what's really happening is a subtle dismantling of that inner armor. Their body begins to communicate what their words cannot. Every touch becomes a confession, every sigh a release of the emotions they've long suppressed. It's in this space that their heart begins to trust again, not because they've stopped being afraid, but because the pull of genuine connection feels stronger than the urge to run. Emotional vulnerability in this form is one of the most profound ways avoidants express love. They may never articulate their feelings outright, but their behavior shifts in ways that speak louder than words. They might whisper something uncharacteristically gentle, hold your hand longer than expected, or seek reassurance through closeness rather than avoidance. Their body language softens. The tension that usually defines their presence begins to melt. It's as if, in that fleeting moment, they've allowed love to disarm them completely. And though they may still retreat afterward, though their mind might wrestle with what it means to have been so open, the truth remains. During those moments of vulnerability, their love is real. It's not the kind of love that shouts or demands recognition. It's quiet, trembling, and raw, expressed through the smallest details that only those who truly see them will notice. For an avoidant, Letting someone in that deeply is not a casual act. It's a silent revolution within themselves. It's the moment when love transforms from something they fear into something they finally begin to feel. For most avoidants, intimacy has often been something they manage rather than experience. It becomes a situation they control, something they can enter and exit without surrendering too much of themselves. When love isn't genuine, their presence feels mechanical, distant, and detached, as though they're there physically but not emotionally. Yet, when their feelings are real, that pattern begins to shift in ways even they don't fully understand. During lovemaking, they move from performance to presence. The need to control fades, replaced by the quiet awareness of being fully in the moment with the person they love. It's a transformation that reveals itself not through grand gestures, but through subtle emotional depth. When love touches an avoidant deeply, their entire energy changes. They stop treating intimacy as something to be managed and begin to experience it as a shared emotional exchange. Instead of being lost in thoughts or worries about vulnerability, they tune in to their partner's breathing, the rhythm of the moment, the warmth between them. Their body and mind align in a rare harmony that only genuine connection can create. They stop trying to be perfect, stop trying to appear unaffected, and allow themselves to simply be. The act of lovemaking becomes less about control and more about communion, a merging of two souls who, for a brief time, exist beyond fear. Presence is a foreign concept to the avoidant because their mind is usually a battlefield of avoidance strategies and emotional defenses. To be present requires trust, and trust demands that they lower their armor. But when they love someone deeply, they find themselves unable to stay guarded. They start noticing every detail, the way their partner breathes, the subtle movements, the feeling of skin against skin that makes them feel seen in a way words never could. For someone who has spent their life disconnecting from emotion to feel safe, being this aware is both terrifying and beautiful. They realize that this isn't about performance or pleasure alone, it's about belonging. In genuine love, the avoidance focus shifts entirely. Instead of viewing physical intimacy as a duty or escape, they begin to see it as a sacred form of communication. Their attention deepens. They listen with their body, respond with tenderness, and move with care. There's no pretense, no emotional disguise. They stop hiding behind the mask of indifference because, in that moment, connection feels stronger than fear. The way they touch changes. It becomes intentional, not mechanical. Their gestures carry emotional meaning rather than instinctive routine. They may reach for your hand mid-act, brush their fingers against your face, or rest their forehead against yours, grounding themselves in the emotional truth of the moment. This kind of presence doesn't come naturally to them. It's the product of inner conflict, slowly dissolving in the warmth of trust. For avoidance, emotional closeness can feel suffocating, but when they truly love, they no longer seek distance afterward. They seek closeness. They want to linger, not escape. They become more attuned to their partner's emotions, even anticipating them, as if their heart has learned a new language. When they are genuinely in love, they want to experience, not avoid, the fullness of emotional and physical union. Every touch becomes a message, every breath a silent acknowledgement of their connection. Presence over performance also means they allow their imperfections to show. They stop trying to seem detached or invulnerable. Their emotions, fear, affection, longing, start surfacing in small, unguarded moments. They might whisper something tender, laugh softly in between, or hold their partner afterward without needing to pull away. These gestures might seem small, but for an avoidant, they signify a profound shift, the acceptance that love doesn't have to be controlled to be safe. When they love genuinely, their presence becomes the purest expression of trust. They stop thinking of intimacy as a test of independence and start seeing it as a space where they can let go of the emotional armor they've worn for so long. In that stillness, where neither person is trying to prove anything, the avoidant becomes fully human again, soft, aware, and entirely present. They discover that real intimacy isn't about losing control, it's about finding peace in being seen and accepted as they are. For the avoidant, control has always been a survival mechanism. From an early age, they learned that depending on others meant risking pain, rejection, or abandonment. So they built a fortress within themselves, strong, impenetrable, and safe. They learned to hold their emotions tightly, to manage love from a distance, to give just enough to feel connected, but never enough to feel exposed. Yet when genuine love enters their life, this structure begins to tremble. During lovemaking, something changes. What was once an act carefully managed to maintain emotional dominance becomes an experience that calls them to surrender. It's not just about giving up physical control. It's about releasing the emotional defenses that have defined them for so long. When love is real, surrender for the avoidant becomes an act of profound trust. It's not easy for them to let go of the need to steer every emotional experience. Their fear of intimacy is not born from indifference, but from the deep-seated belief that closeness leads to loss. To surrender is to risk being hurt, to let someone see them without the layers of control they use to survive. But genuine love softens that fear. In the warmth of a partner who feels safe, their body begins to relax in ways their mind never allowed before. They start to move with openness rather than guardedness. The barriers between body and emotion blur, and the very act of being close becomes a quiet rebellion against their old patterns. In that moment of surrender, their vulnerability takes shape not through words, but through energy. Their body language speaks of trust, the way they yield to touch, the way they let their guard fall, the way they no longer try to dictate the rhythm or direction of connection. They're not trying to perform or control. They're allowing themselves to be guided by emotion rather than fear. Their defenses soften because love has created a sense of safety strong enough to override years of emotional conditioning. It's as if, for the first time, they can breathe freely in closeness without feeling the instinct to retreat. Surrender for the avoidant is not submission. It's a letting go of isolation. It's the quiet acceptance that love doesn't have to mean loss, that they can be held and still remain whole. When they love genuinely, this act becomes symbolic. Every moment of trust during intimacy reflects a deeper psychological shift, one where they stop fighting their need for connection and begin to embrace it. They stop viewing vulnerability as danger and start to see it as a shared act of courage. Their body responds differently. There's more stillness, more attunement, more emotional presence. The rhythm becomes less about control and more about flow, about existing fully in the shared heartbeat of the moment. This surrender often surprises them. For someone used to retreating from emotional intensity, the feeling of giving in can be disorienting. Yet beneath that confusion lies relief. The walls that once protected them begin to feel heavy, unnecessary. In genuine love, the avoidant learns that trust doesn't mean dependency, it means freedom from fear. It's in that space that they begin to experience intimacy not as a threat, but as a form of healing. They stop analyzing and start feeling. They stop anticipating loss and begin to experience presence. Their partner becomes not an intruder, but a witness to their awakening. Through this process, they uncover a truth they've long avoided. Control may protect the heart, but it also starves it. To truly connect, they must risk losing the very control that once kept them safe. So, when an avoidant surrenders during lovemaking, It is never just about the physical act. It's a quiet declaration of faith. It's them saying without words, "I trust you enough to stop running." In that surrender, they find something they've unconsciously searched for their entire lives: the safety of being fully seen and still loved. For someone with avoidant tendencies, the moments after lovemaking often reveal more truth than the act itself. Usually they pull away, not out of coldness, but because the intimacy that just occurred has stirred emotions they don't know how to handle. The closeness feels overwhelming, the vulnerability too raw, so they retreat to regain their emotional balance. It's their way of re-establishing control, of reminding themselves that they are safe within distance. But when their love is genuine, this post-intimacy moment changes profoundly. Instead of fleeing from connection, they linger in it. Their body may still tense at first, out of habit, but something in them resists the old pattern. They stay, not because they have to, but because they want to. And in that simple act of staying, a quiet revolution takes place within their heart. After genuine lovemaking, when the emotions are real, an avoidant who once used detachment as armor begins to crave closeness. The silence between breaths becomes peaceful instead of suffocating. They may reach for your hand, rest their head on your chest, or hold you just a little longer than usual. These gestures may seem small, but for them, they're monumental. It means they've crossed a line between self-protection and trust. Their mind, which usually screams for space, finally finds calm in proximity. They discover that being held doesn't equal losing themselves. For the first time, touch feels like safety rather than confinement. This post-intimacy connection is where love begins to anchor itself in their psyche. Avoidants rarely allow emotional exposure to linger because it forces them to confront feelings they've long suppressed: love, fear, tenderness, longing. Yet genuine affection from someone they trust begins to soften that resistance. They start to realize that emotional closeness doesn't erase their independence, it deepens their humanity. When they stay after making love, when they let the silence breathe instead of breaking it, they are unknowingly rewriting the script of their attachment. Their body, once programmed to flee after vulnerability, begins to associate closeness with comfort instead of danger. In those moments, they might trace your skin absent-mindedly, listen to your heartbeat, or whisper something unexpectedly gentle. They might not have the words to express their emotions, but their presence speaks volumes. They stay not because they've lost their avoidance, but because love has become stronger than fear. The post-intimacy stillness becomes a mirror where they face their truest self, the part that wants to connect, the part that's tired of running. For someone who has spent a lifetime guarding their emotions, choosing to remain open in that space is an act of courage far greater than any words could convey. Often, they will surprise themselves with how natural it begins to feel. They might find comfort in the simplicity of shared breathing, in the warmth of skin against skin, in the realization that being close doesn't have to lead to loss. The vulnerability that once terrified them now feels grounding. They may even find themselves initiating affection afterward, offering quiet reassurance or gentle laughter. It's as though they're rediscovering what intimacy was always meant to be: connection, not exposure; tenderness, not threat. This change doesn't mean the avoidant no longer struggles. There will still be moments of hesitation, flashes of withdrawal, the instinct to protect. But when their love is genuine, these defenses begin to lose power. The emotional bond they share during and after lovemaking begins to melt the invisible walls they've built over the years. The closeness afterward becomes more than physical. It's emotional proof that they can be seen, touched, and still feel safe. The longer they stay, the more they realize that love isn't something to fear. but something to inhabit. So when an avoidant chooses to stay in that quiet aftermath, when they linger in the warmth of the connection rather than retreat into solitude, it's one of the purest signs that their feelings are real. In that stillness, they're no longer protecting themselves from love. They're allowing it to exist, unguarded, unforced, and deeply human. For an avoidant, touch has never been a simple act of affection. It carries layers of history, memories of withheld comfort, boundaries built in silence, and fears tied to the very concept of closeness. They often use physical distance as a shield against emotional exposure, because being touched means being known, and being known has always felt unsafe. Yet when their love is genuine, touch transforms into something entirely different. It becomes more than a physical connection. It turns into a form of emotional expression, a language of feeling that transcends words. During lovemaking, their touch shifts from instinctive or mechanical to intentional and healing. Every movement begins to carry meaning. Every caress becomes a confession their voice cannot make. When love is real, the avoidant's touch holds an unspoken tenderness that reveals their inner world. They might trace your skin slowly, not out of lust, but out of reverence, as though memorizing the presence of someone they once believed they'd never feel safe with. Their touch carries hesitation at first, as if testing whether it's truly okay to let their walls down. But as trust deepens, it becomes softer, steadier, more open. It's no longer about control or performance, it's about connection. The way they touch becomes their way of saying, "I see you," or perhaps more honestly, "You're the only one I've ever allowed to see me." For the avoidant, this is not just intimacy, it's transformation. Touch in genuine love serves as a form of communication that bypasses their intellectual defenses. They may not be able to articulate what they feel, but their body tells the truth. You can sense it in the way their hands linger, in the way they pull you closer even when their mind still carries the urge to retreat. Their touch becomes a silent dialogue between fear and desire, between the instinct to protect and the longing to belong. It's their way of bridging the distance between what they feel and what they can't yet say. In this space, love becomes a healer, softening what the past has hardened, mending what emotional distance has broken. For the avoidant, genuine intimacy through touch represents a kind of redemption. It's a moment where their defenses are no longer armor, but gateways. Each physical connection starts to rewrite the emotional scripts that taught them love was dangerous. Through closeness, they begin to experience safety instead of anxiety, warmth instead of suffocation. The body becomes the vessel through which healing flows, each gesture reminding them that vulnerability doesn't have to mean loss. When they touch with sincerity, it's not just affection, it's forgiveness. It's their way of reconciling with the parts of themselves that once believed they were unworthy of being touched gently. Sometimes their touch carries a trembling kind of sincerity, a mixture of fear and devotion. It's as if they're still surprised that love can exist without demand or rejection. The act of reaching out, of holding someone close, becomes their quiet defiance against the old story of emotional exile. Even if they can't say the words, "I love you," the way they touch says it louder than sound ever could. Their fingertips tell the truth their mouth has always been too guarded to speak. For someone who has spent years disconnected from their emotions, this ability to connect through touch is nothing short of spiritual. When their love is genuine, the physical connection becomes symbolic, a bridge between who they were and who they're becoming. Each intimate moment holds within it a quiet evolution. The avoidant, once frozen by fear, begins to thaw. Their touch becomes a living metaphor for healing, one that says, "I'm learning to trust this. I'm learning to trust you. I'm learning to trust myself." It's in those unspoken exchanges that love reaches its most profound form, where the body becomes both a messenger and a sanctuary. For the avoidant, genuine lovemaking becomes less about pleasure and more about presence, less about desire and more about emotional truth. Through touch, they finally allow their love to exist without armor, without resistance. It's no longer about avoiding pain, it's about embracing the connection that makes them feel human again, and in that sacred stillness, their touch becomes what it was always meant to be, a language of healing, trust, and unspoken love. When an avoidant truly loves, their actions in intimacy reveal what their words never could. Emotional vulnerability becomes their language. Presence replaces control, surrender turns into trust, closeness after passion becomes healing, and touch transforms into truth. In their most genuine moments, love stops being a battlefield and becomes a sanctuary, a space where fear and tenderness coexist without judgment. They may not always say how they feel, but their body tells the story of their transformation. Each moment of openness, each second of stillness, each soft touch is a quiet declaration that love has finally reached the places they once thought untouchable. And in that rare, unguarded connection, the avoidant heart learns what it means not just to be loved, but to truly love in return.